Thank you for logging into the LEEP webinar. We'll be discussing LEEP Award winners in the future. I do see some people already taking advantage of the chat pane. Thank you very much. Those who are asking for copies of the presentation, I don't know how we'll be distribute them. We do post them to the LEEP website. So they're always there to view, but we can discuss internally requests for presentations. And thank you for providing your email address if you want something sent to you. So along those lines, if you have a question or a comment during the webinar, please use your chat pane or questions pane in the lower left-hand section of your screen. We will be receiving the questions as we go, and unless there's a major reason to stop, we will try to wait and address the questions at the end. At this time, everyone is muted with a large group of participants. It's just too hard to have open microphones. So again, that's why we're asking you to use the chat pane. My name is Michael Meyer. I'm with Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. I work for the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, is one of the Department of Energy laboratories, and the Department of Energy is one of the sponsors of, or organizers, I guess is the correct title, of the LEEP. The LEEP campaign is Lighting in Energy Efficiency in Parking. It is organized by, as you can see on the title slide, BOMA International, the Green Parking Council, IFMA, the International Facility Managers Association, and a new organizer, the International Parking Institute. We just completed year 1, and we are now moving into year 2. This presentation will discuss many different aspects. We're going to briefly discuss what is LEEP, a quick review of the campaign, what it offers, what you can do. We're going to highlight some of the LEEP Year 1 award winners. And then we're going to actually do a deep dive on 2 of the specific award winners, MC Realty Group and the University of Minnesota. We'll follow it up with a series of presentations, series of summary and a bunch of questions. I am seeing in the question pane if I can be asked to speak louder. I'm also receiving guidance that other people can hear me. So I've tried to amplify my voice. If you're having a hard time hearing me, at this point I would suggest possibly increasing your microphone. I will try to speak louder and use proper diction, but I'm receiving guidance that other people can hear me as well. Other people are also chiming in that their code isn't working to listen in to suggestions. At this point, I don't have answers on the suggestions, and we'll try to someone who's monitoring the chat pane can hopefully address how to possibly help with the code that isn't working for listening in. At this point, I will continue on with the presentation. Again, my name is Michael Meyer. Today's presentation, there were originally to be 3 presenters. Mr. Tom Corso of MC Realty Group had an emergency quite at the last minute and is unavailable to present. Luckily for technology, he provided his slides in advance and provided me with notes. So I will be presenting his slides, and in some places at the question period, I will answer some of the questions. If I don't feel comfortable answering them because I don't know the answer or it is a MC Realty Group judgment, I will just try to defer that, and we'll try to record the answer or a question and try to get back to people on questions that we can answer. So the 3 presenters today that were scheduled, one was me, Michael Meyer. I'm with Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. I've been working for P&L for 7 years, and I have extensive work in parking lots and parking structure, lighting. I support the Better Building Alliance for DOE as well as I work in appliance standards, which focuses on regulatory efforts for making lighting more efficient. Mr. Tom Corso, who has said wasn't available because of an emergency. Tom has been with MC Realty Group over 25 years. He's got great experience across the country. He's currently based out of Kansas City, Missouri. He currently manages about 11 million square feet of commercial office space throughout the U.S., including a management portfolio of $75 million in operations. he serves as the key liaison for MC Realty Development Department for new construction projects. And then I'm going to be presenting on MC Realty's parking structure in Kansas City. And then our actual other presenter is Mr. Puneet Vedi. He's with the University of Minnesota. He's a registered architect with 12 years of experience. He's been involved in the parking ramp and transportation design and construction projects, including complete parking structures, function design, signage, wayfinding, and parking studies. Mr. Vedi is currently a project manager overseeing design and construction of parking and transportation at Minnesota Parking and Transportation Services, again at the University of Minnesota. Just as a quick precursor throughout the whole presentation, sometimes when we talk parking structures, I will also use the word parking structures or parking garages, and I know that Mr. Vedi also uses the word parking ramps. I don't know the exact technical difference between those type of structures, but more often they're very interchangeable. So if you do hear them, they're typically the same thing of a multi-level parking platform that maybe be above ground or below ground or intermixed, but it is essentially different from a parking lot. Moving into our next slide, what is LEEP? So LEEP is an organized campaign by, again, BOMA, Green Parking Council, IFMA, the Department of Energy, and now IPI. We're trying to get people to save energy in parking. We're targeting energy savings of over 30% compared to ASHRAE 90.1, and depending on how old some of their sites are, the savings can be over 50% depending on what the original code was. It's not just about energy efficient equipment, or pulling down an old light fixture and installing a new fixture, that's great, but also in factoring in controls. You'll actually see through our award winners that I'll show in a little bit how controls really pushed some sites to saving a lot more than just equipment. We saw energy savings in LEEP year 1 approaching 90%, and controls is how we got there. So it's great to replace equipment, but if you don't do the controls, you're leaving a lot of energy on the table. Also, high efficiency lighting lasts longer than traditional lighting, which can also help out with our economics. You'll see some of that in the MC Realty, where they do talk a little bit about maintenance, but it's just briefly mentioned. Also, there's a user satisfaction. Ideally, we're finding through relighting that people are happier with some of the new lighting technologies, moving away from maybe some of the lower poor color rendering technologies to broad spectrum sources and those type of things. We encourage you to join LEEP, which is the URL is there. Again, this is the whole campaign that we're promoting energy efficiency in parking facilities. As I said, the LEEP campaign goals, one is we're trying to increase the number of parking lots and parking structures that deliver effective lighting. We're also documenting best practices and recognizing successes. Originally, year 1, LEAP's goal was 100 million square feet of either installed or committed to install energy efficient lighting equipment and controls. We actually exceeded that goal at the end of year 1, and year 2, the program is actually committed to a cumulative goal of 500 million square feet of parking structure and parking lot. That sounds like a lot, 500 million square feet. But if you look at some of the data out there, it's suggested that there might be somewhere up in the order of 2 billion parking spaces in the U.S. is the high end of the estimate. So if you take the mid-range of the estimate of 500 million parking spaces, you'll see that we're talking billions of square feet of parking lot and parking structures. So it's a great, admirable goal, but it is small compared to the national estimate of total parking area in the United States. What do you need to do to join LEAP? Really, it's the easiest thing to do is you just go on a website, you fill out a form, and you make 0 commitments. And I like to highlight the 0 commitment because you can just do the form, and we'll reach out to you and ask what type of additional technical support you might need or other things. But I like to, again, highlight 0 commitment because we're not asking for a pledge, we're not asking for money, and so they're trying to reduce the barrier of joining. The first thing you can do is evaluate. Evaluate the business case for high efficiency lighting. We provide resources and case studies and calculators. We launched in September of 2012. Just commit to considering retrofitting one of your parking facilities or in your new parking facility, doing it to more efficient standards than what might be the bare minimum of the energy code. As I've mentioned before, and I will continue to keep mentioning, there is technical assistance offered through, it's supported by the Department of Energy through third-party independent contractors. They're world-class lighting designers. It's available till the end of 2014. It is limited technical assistance because they can't do an outright lighting design for you because of liability and other reasons. But if you have a question about, if you join, you can then call upon them and they can answer a lot of questions for you. A site in Texas recently is having a problem with corrosive saltwater air on their light fixtures. They joined, and now they're getting some great expertise, some guidance and expertise from some world-famous lighting designers who are researching what are some of the issues of both saltwater corrosion and not just the light fixture, but also in the pole. Do you go to fiberglass? Do you go to wood? How do you deal with those type of things? They can also make great independent recommendations about maybe what type of light sources you might want to use for your environment or your type of application. A parking lot versus a parking structure, you might need a different light source. If you're in Hawaii versus, say, Alaska, where you're going to have temperature and humidity extremes, they can make recommendations. They are independent of manufacturers, so they are just making good recommendations based on lighting needs. Ultimately, if you join, we'd like you to come back and report. We love to hear what you're doing. Even there are people who've joined who've already just completed their site who need zero technical assistance, and they're reporting what they've done. This has two advantages. One, it helps us get a sense of what the market is doing. But two, you can actually be eligible for a LEEP award. And we're going to promote, and we have and we continue to promote LEEP award winners through written materials, social media, many other type of things. And award winners were recently honored at the IFMA Fusion Conference. So again, if you join and you report and you participate in LEEP awards, you might be able to be recognized. The deadline to report savings for LEEP award year 2 is March of 2015. Then obviously we're going to announce our savings throughout the year, 2014, and then awards will be announced in June of 2015 at the BOMA conference in Los Angeles, California. So I'm going to pause for a second. Someone asked the question, does or could LEEP explicitly encourage collection and sharing of actual pre- and post-consumption data to our participants' utilities for purpose of enabling the leverage that utility energy efficiency programs can bring? That was a mouthful of a question. So I guess essentially what this person is asking is, if LEEP knew about a site, could we share it with the utility? At this point, we have not discuss that internally. One of the challenges we would have on our side is that we are currently not asking about who the utility is for the site. We could figure that out. We have active number of utilities that are sponsors. Not sponsors, supporters. And so we are always actively working with, trying to work with utilities better. Either to we have a database of utility incentives. So if there's an incentive on there that we haven't mentioned, we'd definitely like that. Or if a utility or an energy efficiency program is rolling out a specific program, and we could try to figure out a way to coordinate with that or leverage it, we'd be very interested into it. So this person who asked that question, we're going to try to reach out to you a little more after this webinar and try to work more to answer that question. So thank you for the question. Moving on to the LEEP awards. So I've mentioned awards. Why? Because it's great. We had 12 awards in LEEP in year 1, and we are probably going to have the same 12 in year 2. We might modify a couple of them for how they're evaluated versus commercial versus a municipal or federal entity, just because who the entity is differs on some of their efficiency requirements, as well as when we start getting into things like largest percentage of sites upgraded. A federal site is very hard to quantify, well, what is percentage of site? So in terms of what we did is we recognized people for absolute savings at single site in a retrofit, and as well as percentage savings. The reason is that some places can save a lot of energy, and some places can save a great percentage of energy. And so we tried to recognize both small sites as well as large sites. We also looked for retrofits as well as new construction, because each scenario represents a different challenge, as well as different savings potentials. We also tried to represent a best award for best use of controls. I cannot emphasize enough, controls are what's going to get us to the most maximize energy efficiency. And there are people out there that are doing novel approaches to controls. And we would like to highlight their approaches and what they're doing. There were some companies or organizations that did a large number of site upgrades, and we definitely want to recognize them. But there are also smaller organizations that managed to do a larger percentage of their portfolio, so we recognize them. And then there are some people that, just because of sheer economies of scale and other factors, they just have the largest portfolio-wide energy savings, so we recognize them. So there's many different ways to be recognized. We tried to make it very competitive. We had a number of people participate, but the key thing I want to take away from this slide is, if you're a small site, if you're a big site, if you're a municipal site, if you're a commercial site, there is a potential for an award out there for you. So continuing on for the LEEP campaign Year 1 award results, we had 21 organizations submit materials. A quick data about those awards winners. We had 12 organizations actually recognized. Of those 12, they represented 140 million square feet just in the data they provided us about their parking lots, their parking structures, garages, and ramps. This equates to almost 400,000 parking spaces of more energy efficient lighting, or roughly 36 million kilowatts saved annually, or again, 3.5 million in electricity savings alone. I know that in lighting, we often tend to look at the new cutting-edge technologies, but it was really impressive to see the award winners. It was a mixture of lighting systems: metal halide, fluorescent, induction, and LED. Everything but incandescent seemed to be competitive, and it was quite impressive. And a lot of sites incorporated controls. If you haven't guessed, I'm a big fan of controls, and I'm going to keep mentioning controls. But really, that's where the savings really helps some sites go past the others and actually be recognized for the award. We had some very competitive sites, and when they layered in controls, the sites that did that managed to win the award. At this point, I'm going to highlight just the specific award winners. So for Cox Enterprises, they actually used a metal halide system, and they actually saw a 50% energy savings, or 1.7 million kilowatt hours, at that site alone. This site is huge. It's 13 million square feet. It's a very large auto facility in Pennsylvania, but they were able to go from a high wattage metal halide to a low wattage metal halide, and coupled it with better use of controls, and managed to get a pretty effective payback. MC Realty Group, who you'll hear about in a little bit, in Kansas City, they used fluorescent and controls, and they got a 76% energy savings and almost 2 million kilowatt hours. Regency Centers, they were also recognized for greatest percentage energy savings. They submitted a number of data points, but we could only recognize one parking lot for this category, and they actually had an 88% energy savings, and they used LED. Marine-based Quantico, Walmart also were recognized for percentage savings in a retrofit of a single parking lot. MGM, Theodicare, and University of Minnesota, they were all recognized for great energy savings, percentage energy savings in a retrofit in a parking structure. Look at that number by MGM Resorts. It's a big parking structure at a hotel casino in the Detroit area, and they were saving 4 million kilowatt hours through their lighting upgrades. So there's a variety of technologies that were used, and savings varied based on some of the biggest spots I've ever seen. So I'm going to pause for a second. Someone was asking what were the existing light sources for the winners. It depends. So in the case of Cox Enterprises, they went from high wattage metal halide to a lower wattage metal halide. MC Realty, they went from a metal halide as well to a fluorescent system. And then marine base Quantico, they actually upgraded a lot of the parking lots, actually almost 100 different parking lots on the entire base. It's a very large base. There the technology ranged from metal halide, high pressure sodium. In this case, the way they recognized they achieved the most savings was because it was against a mercury vapor baseline. Walmart, and I believe was high pressure sodium, but I might be wrong on that one. And then University of Minnesota was also high pressure sodium. So to answer the question there, the variety of sites, the existing technology was predominantly HID, metal halide, and high pressure sodium, and in some cases, some mercury vapor. I got another comment here asking why the payback was high for marine base Quantico compared to some of the other sites. A couple of different reasons. One is that its biggest one, as my understanding, is that it's a parking lot, so you have lower operating hours. And two, because it's a federal facility, I'm guessing I know their electricity rate is just really low, as well as their location. So it just had to do with confluence of operating hours and low utility costs. So that hopefully answered the other question. I keep seeing a couple of people. So everyone seems to want to know why the payback. So the answer with the 25-year payback was just operating hours and a very low cost in cost of electricity. Another person asked, what were our criteria for determining winners? So I'm going to move on to the next slide while I answer that question. These are all award winners in new construction. So in 5, it was a absolute savings in a parking lot. 6, absolute savings in a parking structure. 7 was percentage savings in a parking lot. And 8 is percentage savings in a parking structure. As I pause here, what were the criteria? Well, they had to provide. We have an Excel spreadsheet on the LEEP campaign website. They have to provide information about where the site is located, what lighting systems they're using. What's the existing technology? How many poles how many fixtures they have? What are the operating hours? If they used any type of advanced controls that are like motion sensor based, we actually required meter data. So if a site said they were using an occupancy sensor, we actually required the meter data for a period of time so we could actually validate what their savings were. For new construction, the assumptions are on the website. We actually did assume certain types of power densities, and what we did is we took the operating hours of the site and or if they were not using controls, we took the operating hours and created a baseline and compared against that. We did loosely validate light levels. There was a site that seemed to have really aggressive energy savings, and we did verify that they met their basic lighting level needs because we didn't want anyone too aggressively reducing their energy. So that's how the criteria worked. If you have more questions, please follow up. I don't want to, as much as I like crawling to a spreadsheet, I don't want to bore everyone on the phone, and I'm time sensitive. So continuing on to LEEP awards results, other categories, best use of controls. These we recognize the California Lighting Technology Center and the Howard Hughes Corporation for best use of controls. California Lighting Technology Center had developed or deployed actually adaptive exterior lighting controls. It used radio frequency and many other new types of communication communication protocols as well as sensor protocols for a parking lot at a hospital in California. Very novel. As well as the Howard Hughes Corporation in Hawaii. This is a parking structure. They just used a number of different controls. They were layered, daylight, occupancy sensor, time of day. Based on the data they provided us, I don't think there was a fixture in that parking structure that was not connected to some type of control. It was quite impressive. 10 is the largest number of sites upgraded. Kimco actually focused more on controls, less on equipment. Some of that number, by the way, I'd like to point out for Kimco is preliminary because they had just rolled out the program and didn't have as much data as they could provide us at the time. MGM Resorts, they did the greatest percentage of their portfolio, and they saved almost 500,000 kilowatt hours total. And then Walmart had the largest portfolio-wide energy savings. And on average, they were saving about 130,000 kilowatts per site. I'm going to pause for a second. A major national... Oh, okay. So a person says that someone is estimating that 2/3 or 3/4 of all jobs are LED. Is this happening nationally? So based on the data set that we have seen from the LEEP awards, I would lean probably to the 2/3 side. So for parking lots and parking structures, based on our data set, yes, it does seem that this person asks, it does seem that about 2/3 to 3/4 of the parking lot lighting seems to be LED, and the LEEP, based on the LEEP award data set, it does seem to be about, the 2/3 number seems to be in that ballpark. Does seem to be justified. I'm going to continue on at this point. This would have been where I turned it over to MC Realty Group. This is what the award looked like for MC Realty Group. I am presenting on behalf of Tom Corso at this point. Just a quick note about MC Realty Group. It's an industry innovator that specializes in full-service facility property management and project development dedicated to controlling costs. You can read about their experience and their type of buildings on this slide. This is a picture, and this is, I have to lie, I have to admit, I think this is a beautiful parking structure. I've become a big parking structure nerd doing LEEP, and I just think this is a beautiful building. So I love looking at this picture. It's 1.1 million square feet, so it's a good-sized parking structure, 3,800 parking spaces. It's great. So this is a parking structure that's I don't entirely know the contractual structure agreement, but essentially it's servicing the IRS facility in Kansas City. So peak season is tax season. So they 6,000 employees during peak season and 3,500 employees in the off-peak season. They, as I previously mentioned, had been using they'd been using metal halide, and in their retrofit, they went to a 3-lamp T8 vapor type fixture shown here, and it had a occupancy sensor that was just came out of a knockout, and it would determine when there was someone there, and would reduce output to 1 or 2 lamps based on occupancy. And they were able to get a return on investment roughly around 2 years. And we'll see some more of their economics here. Someone did ask about reports of demand savings, and I'll address that actually in 2 slides. So MC Realty did look at LEDs at the time. In their initial installation, they weren't happy with them because the LED optics didn't have the right distribution for what they wanted. However, MC Realty actually has done 7 or 8 parking structures as of now, and some of their more recent installations are using LED retrofits. So they actually have used both technologies, and he wanted to include that. Moving into the next slide. So this is what are some of the benefits of lighting upgrades? It can improve visual perception and appearance of the space. It can reduce operating and maintenance costs. It can minimize environmental effect. Mr. Corso did include the mention of the qualifies for EPAC tax deductions. I'm just going to include the 2 bullets here. Those who may not be familiar with this, it was a provision from the Energy Policy Act of 2005, and it said if buildings installed a certain power density, they were eligible for a tax deduction, and we can get into the taxes of that later. It recently expired, as you can see, at the end of 2013. However, there have been proposals both by industry as well as some draft bills in Congress to possibly renew it. It's also known as the 179D, which is the section of the tax code, so in case you hear those terms interchangeably. And that becomes, you can actually see how it factors in to their slides. So this is their cash flow and real property value. You can see that they were saving about $120,000 a year in energy savings from the upgraded lighting. A person did ask about reports of demand savings. Here they're seeing about 182 kilowatts reduced as just an equipment change, not even factoring in the use of controls. So to focus on demand for a second, demand is more important during the day where demand charges are higher than at night. So we don't tend to focus on demand reduction in parking lots as much because they are supposed to operate at night. I say supposed to because we've all driven by a parking lot that is operating during the day. So some of the parking structures do look at demand. In terms of the LEEP award winners, it only focused on energy efficiency. We tried to get a sense of the economics, but it did not. Economics was not a factor in any of the LEEP award winners. So to answer another question here, aren't there security concerns with occupancy sensors in public parking? I'm going to step back actually to this slide because it's a great graphic to look at while we do that. So the security concerns, so the data out there says that the perception of safety increases with light levels, not the actual overall measure of crime, just the perception of safety. So that's one. Two, a lot of my experience and talking with other people has been that when you reduce the light levels, most people are never advocating of turning off the lights entirely. They're just advocating reducing the light levels. But B, what it is that with an occupancy sensor there, when a person moves, the light turns on. So if a person, and I'm going to move into this slide, which provides a great example, if there happened to be a person behind this van and they moved, the sensor would see them and would raise the light levels when someone was approaching. So it's actually an added security benefit by actually telling you someone's in the space versus a constant light output. If the light levels never change and there were people there and we're moving and we're about to move out behind this vehicle, there would be no indication of that. So I mean, obviously, if you have a safety concern, you should definitely address it with your security staff. I've been assisted federal sites where security is paramount, and they've actually deployed occupancy sensors in their parking structures, as well as hospitals and colleges. They've also deployed them. And once you get the buy-in of the security staff of how they work, most people tend to like them. And again, the general perception of the public is they like it more because they can see the lights turn an increase in output when people come by. Going back into the economics, so essentially, they were able to realize some of the EPACT tax deduction. You see that in the slide. They also got a rebate of about $80,000 from their local utility, and they were able to see a simple payback of 2.5 years in the slide. Lots of fun economics here, but I don't want to. I'm definitely time conscious, so I'm going to keep going on. So at this point, again, this goes back to the person's question about demand reduction. You can see that overall so far, MC Realty Group has probably shaved off almost 50% of some of the demand already just by looking at the 400,000 to 222,000 in this slide here. As of now, MC Realty has done about 2.5 million square feet or 7,000 parking spaces, which is just about half of their total parking portfolio. So it's great to see MC Realty as a committed partner. And in 1 second, I'm going to turn over the presentation to Puneet, but I want to respond to a quick question here. Somebody asked about the beauty of the parking structure, but what about daylighting? So that's a great question. It is fun looking, but are they losing the energy savings potential of daylighting? Yes, that's an easy answer. Yes, they are getting the benefit of the occupancy sensors. In my experience, it makes sense to do one or the other, but once you've layered in a control of a daylighting sensor and an occupancy sensor in the same fixture, you somewhat negate some of your savings. You can eke out more, but they're not always additive. So if an occupancy sensor is going to save you 30% energy and a daylight sensor is going to save you 60% or 30% energy, you can't add them together and say you're getting 60% energy savings. But the person asked a great question. Definitely you should always think about daylight harvesting when you can in a parking structure. But there might be thermal reasons that they went for that type of construction, but I don't know if they were heating it. So there's a lot of life cycle and total building design issues that you might want to think about. At this point, I'm going to take a quick pause in the presentation and hand it over to Mr. Vedi, who will be presenting on the University of Minnesota.
Thank you, Michael. The University of Minnesota is very proud to be honored for the LEEP Award, along with all the other facilities and owners. The LEEP Award itself actually reinforces the university's motto of "Driven to Discover." The University of Minnesota, it's actually the Twin Cities campus, which actually is located in Minneapolis and St. Paul, a land-grant research university, one of the largest in the nation. Currently, I think the data I found was the fourth largest university in the nation. The population we serve, some of the data here, student fall 2013 population, about 51,500 students, full-time staff and faculty, another 14,246. And we have an estimated daily visitors of 15,000, so approximately, total approximate per day is about 80,000 people on campus. The campus itself, East Bank campus, is 340 acres, West Bank is 52 acres, and then the St. Paul campus is another 540 acres. The parking and transportation services, the ones that are the department here that handles all the parking and transportation on campus, we have 71 full-time staff, 127 student employees. We have 16 parking ramps, which is 10,273 parking spaces, and 130 parking lots. Granted, those vary in size from as small as 2, 3, 4, 5 cars up to multiple hundreds, and there's another 10,000 spaces there. So our total parking we have on campus is about 20,000 spaces, just over. The Northrop Auditorium Garage, in which we won this award, is located on our historic Northrop District Mall. You can see that's Northrop Auditorium, and it's actually an underground garage, part of the building there, built in 1931, 24,375 square feet with 75 parking spots in the facility. The existing technology, again, is high-pressure sodium, 150-watt fixtures, no controls, lights were on 24/7. In our upgrade, we went to LED lighting. We actually looked at we used a Canal Tech Deck fixture, 56 watts on its high setting, and then it reduces 22 on its low setting with limelight controls. And you can see in the photo there, that's a picture of the after the retrofits. And the question of what is the ceiling heights, I don't know floor to actual ceiling deck, but the clearance in this garage is I want to say it's 610 underneath all the mechanical in this facility. Again, going back to the controls, one thing on the actual fixtures we used. Some of the reasons there were just the ability to have uplight features to eliminate that cave effect, texture lens to reduce glare, and just the aesthetic appearance of the light itself, the light rendering. Controls, again, as I mentioned, we used limelight controls, so the fixtures start at 56 watts when on high, and then it reduces 22 on the low setting. And we used a mixture of occupancy and photocells. Well, the photocells is actually not in this particular garage. We did that in another facility. I'll come back to that in a minute. But the lights dim after 10 minutes of no movement or ambient light levels. Each facility that we had, they were divided up into up to 50 groups or zones to allow communication and localized light adjustments. The communication through radio frequency and communicates back through the gateway. System criteria that used to determine light level is schedule events, obviously ambient light, and then the occupancy sensors themselves. As I was mentioning, each fixture has a radio frequency sensor that communicates back to the gateway. So the gateway is a centralized communication network that uses the data that basically, so all I can all talk in real time to reduce the lighting as, again, after about 10 minutes of no movement in the facility. Let's see. The sensors, again, the big thing with the sensors in this garage was just getting them located in strategic locations. For example, not only in the drive aisles, but where pedestrian enters, from stairways, and actually this facility, a couple tunnels that connect with it. In regards to, again, just the whole question earlier about as it drops to its lowest setting and making sure that it comes back on real time, and the controls were set up so that way we could have to control the system, reduce the power consumption, and to keep that safety factor, because that's one of the biggest concerns on a university campus is safety of students and faculty and all the visitors. A couple challenges being a northern climate, and one of our above ground multi-level tier structures, we actually had 3 settings. We had high, medium, and low. We eliminated the medium just because we needed the quicker changeover from the low to high. So that was one thing we noticed. And then just again, one of the facilities, and even this was built in 1931. Just the technology, finding dedicated space. Again, not a very big space needed, but just getting that and establishing the Ethernet connections. The bigger issue with the Ethernet connections was, I think, an internal issue, not either the lights or the controls, but more of a university internal. So the University of Minnesota is actually embarking on a 3-year campaign to retrofit pretty much all of our parking facilities, both the ramps and the lots. Phase 1, which this Northrop garage was, completed in 2013, along with 2 other facilities. Currently, we are starting up our Phase 2, which is another 5 parking ramps, which will be completed late summer, early fall, and then next year we'll do 5 more parking ramps to balance, and then address all of our parking lots as well.
Thanks, Puneet. Very excited about 130 parking lots possibly being updated. Before I go on to some of the specifics about these award winners, I do want to acknowledge a couple of people that have already joined the LEEP campaign during this webinar, so thank you for doing that. And then we received 2 questions here. One person wanted to know about the relative economics of autonomous occupancy sensors and daylight sensors versus a wireless mesh coupled with occupancy sensors. So pretty much what this person's asking is, if you had a standalone occupancy sensor, let's say in the what MC Realty Group did, versus a networked system like University of Minnesota had, I think that there's a couple other factors that would need to be involved to figure out labor and control points and those type of things. We'll try to follow up directly with that person who asked that question. And then Puneet, someone asked if are all of your parking lots indoors? I guess, can you address that question real fast?
Oh, sure. So of our 13 structures, and this is where I use different terms for parking ramp versus garage. So when I refer to parking ramp, I'm referring to anything above ground. When I refer to garage, I'm referring to anything enclosed or below ground. So of our actually 16 structures. I can 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are actual garages, either a standalone below-grade subsurface garage, or in case of Northrop, part of the the lowest level of the building. So that's 4, and then the balance are actual structured multi-tier ramps that range from a couple hundred cars up to, I think our largest facility is over 2,100 car parking ramp.
Wow, thanks, 2,100. That's always big. We're going to open it up for more questions, so please keep sending them. It's been great that you have been. I always like to take a point to do some comparisons here. So in the table above, you'll see the 2 different comparisons of MC Realty Group and University of Minnesota. You can see their lighting power densities. Those who may not know the term, it's an energy code metric. It's your installed watts per square foot. So if a fixture draws 100 watts, you count out how many of them you have, you divide it by your area, and that's what your power density is. What's interesting is how far the energy savings we're able to achieve here. Many of these facilities exceeded the current energy codes to approach these levels. You can also see that if they had applied for the 179D tax deduction, there would have been they would have been able to maximize the benefit for it as well. Again, I keep wanting to highlight it might be renewed. The other thing I really want to point out is efficient options exist. So both the MC Realty Group and the University of Minnesota use 2 different approaches to realize energy savings, but they both saved roughly, let's say, 60% to 70% using different technologies, just using fixtures. But then when they layered in the controls with them, MC Realty Group was able to get to 76% energy savings, and University of Minnesota got to a whopping 90%. The controls, there's a couple of key things we should talk about. One, don't leave them out. In terms of your labor costs, if you're installing a new fixture, you've already sent a person there to do the wiring. It's not much more expensive just to have that person do that wiring for the control device at the same time. Yes, there's some other factors of more expensive materials because you have now control. Also, you might have to do some, if in case of a network system, you have some labor related to a network system. But if you're already sending a person to touch the fixture, do it once. It's very cost effective to do, and don't leave it on the table. Savings from controls depends on really your low output setting and your time. So Puneet mentioned a time setting of 10 minutes. Had it been a setting of 5 minutes, they probably would have saved a little more energy. In my experience, sites, when they start going to controls, they get a little nervous and they may experiment with the time. And in some cases, they may go with a 20-minute timeout setting. Well, if you think about how long in 20 minutes timeout setting, if you have a car driving through your area once every 19 minutes, you've foiled your control device. So pay attention to what your control is, your time setting. If at all possible, field adjustable is great. Also your low output setting. Again, the reduction from your high output to your low output is where you're getting your energy savings. So you want to try to maximize that to whatever you can while still providing whatever is deemed necessary in your low level settings. Because again, if you only reduce your output by half, and it's only in the low output state half the time, that means you've only saved a quarter of your energy, because half times a half is only a quarter. So if you're going to maximize your savings, you definitely have to think about when you're going to be in your low state and how much you're getting to there. I'm going to pause for a second. Someone asked a question. So a great question about temperature and fluorescent technology. Doesn't fluorescent ramp up too slowly in cold weather climates for safety? Fluorescent is going to have a problem in some temperatures, yes. In terms of ramp up, it will take a little longer to get a full output than other technologies. In some cases, we're talking fractions of seconds, and in other cases, we're talking, fluorescent might ramp up to 90% output in a second, and then it'll take a lot longer to gradually output. So, when you start talking about looking at temperature, definitely think about where your site is. obviously if you're in Arizona, temperature is not a problem. If you're in Minnesota or Chicago had a brutal winter. Definitely pay attention to temperature and how it's going to affect your light sources. So continuing on into our next slide. LEEP, next steps. Join the LEEP campaign. More people have already joined since I said it before, and I'm going to say it again. Thank you for joining. Keep joining. Again, limited technical assistance is offered from world-class lighting designers. You can pick their brains. You can ask them questions. We'll help promote your project if you join LEAP. You're eligible possibly for a Year 2 award. It's any project that's been completed since January 1st, 2010. So if you've already done half your portfolio, you're eligible. If you're in the process of doing it now, you're eligible. You just got to get it done. It has to be installed by March of 2015. That is the end date of the award data collection. So that's the only requirement, that it actually has to be installed. We are not for it to be eligible for a Year 2 award. As I mentioned, deadline is March 2015. The awards are going to be conferred in sunny Los Angeles in June of 2015. More information, leapcampaign.org, hashtag LEEPcampaign on social media, as well as Light Fair, the big lighting trade show is next week in Las Vegas. If you happen to be there, there will be some information about the LEEP campaign at the Department of Energy's booth on the show floor. At this point, we've been doing it all along, and we'll keep doing it. What questions do you have? You guys have been great. You've asked a lot of questions. I think we've actually answered a lot of them as we've gone. But at this point, if there's anything that we haven't addressed, or if you want us to go back to a slide, I'm going to pause, and feel free to reach out and type any additional questions. While I'm waiting for questions to come in, I'm going to advance to the next slide. Again, here are our partners and contacts. So if for some reason you want to reach out to a specific organization, they're there, as well as their contact information. So I'm going to step back into this slide. So the question here is, as with cold weather fluorescence, what are people seeing with heat and LEDs? Yeah, that's the great question, heat and LEDs. Heat, LEDs at some point don't like heat. We are seeing more and more LED technologies have better thermal management, as well as the LED at the diode level can just handle heat better. So in terms of the degradation output, the effects of heat are still being researched. The effects of heat on LEDs is still being researched. That being said, I grew up in Arizona. That's why you always see me go make references to Arizona a lot. I know of LED installations on the Yuma, Arizona, Mexico border. I know of LED streetlights in Arizona. Arizona State University, my alma mater, has LED parking structure. So in terms of why I keep mentioning all these Arizona sites, heat is being managed. Yes, it's probably going to affect your output somewhat, and yes, it's going to affect your life somewhat, but it doesn't seem to be as detrimental as once thought, and the manufacturers have definitely figured out how to manage it, and we're all testing for it. So if you're going to a high heat environment, you definitely might want to work with your manufacturer directly on that. And in a parking lot, it's operating at night, so in terms of you're looking at nighttime temperatures. So that's a key one there. Have we looked at any plasma lighting solutions? So those who are familiar with plasma, it's essentially an electrodeless HID source and people are using it. So in terms of LEEP as a campaign, LEEP does not require any technology. It can use any technology you want. So plasma is eligible. At this point, no one has submitted a plasma site, and we'd love to evaluate a plasma site to include it in our portfolio of sites. But there isn't any. I do believe I know some plasma sites in Indiana that are street lighting, and I think there's one in Florida. But at this point, no one has submitted anything. Another person said, municipalities, are they eligible? Yes. We actually had 2 municipalities submit awards, and one was very close to winning, but they didn't go far enough. So that's that. If you want to introduce lighting solutions to the LEEP campaign, please go to the LEEP campaign website and reach out to us directly there. It's just the easiest thing. So I do not manage the ASU site. As I mentioned it is my alma mater. I'm being told through the comment pane that someone thinks that heat has been a major issue with the LED fixtures at ASU. I haven't seen any official case studies on that, but I'm not doubting what you're saying. But heat is a question. So depending on either the age of the fixture or the thermal management, it is something you still want to check. So if you are looking at a high heat environment and LED, you definitely want to have tested that fixture in a thermal chamber and get some research on how the thermal management is being done. So if it is out there, if I'm going to now contact some people I know to find out what's going on, at least at Arizona State. But at the moment, pay attention to what the heat issues are. But like I said, there's many places they're installing LEDs in high heat environments. So hopefully everyone's doing the right research. And somebody had some interactions with a plasma fixture, but I'm not going to get into the conjecture of. It's great that people are trying it, and if you have results you want to share, we'd love to hear them. If projects are successful, great. The less successful ones are also teaching moments, and so thank you for providing additional information. And we're still available for questions. Puneet, was there any additional information that may have come to light that you want to provide, or any thoughts?
No, just for what we did here at the university, we actually did prior to I've been here at the University of Minnesota now a little over a year, but prior to my arrival, the way this project started was we teamed up with our energy management group, and they actually did a substantial testing of fixtures. So it wasn't we just said, hey, we're going to do LED. A fair amount of research went involved between our design consultant, our energy management here at the university. So it was a very broad net that was cast to look at lighting holistically here, because again, with the amount of structured facilities and lots we have and campus safety, and it just because we're a very urban campus. We're literally on the other side of the Mississippi River from downtown, and it was quite a start of a process, and as every step of the way, it's just become more and more a rewarding endeavor that we've undertaken, and we're very proud of.
I commend you on the effort, and yeah, it is always from my previous days as a lighting designer, a mock-up is always essential. Evaluate the product on hand and do your research. So at this point, I think we haven't received any new questions recently. So again, I'm going to just step back into this slide here, where we provide the LEEP campaign URL. If you are participating in social media, hashtag LEEP campaign, you can either find comments you can search on it, or you can post on social media that way as well. And please, again, if you're available. And at this point, I'm going to move to the last slide. So someone did ask a question that I wanted to ask. So where can I find a preferred LED fixture manufacturers from case studies? So the LEEP campaign has manufacturers that are supporters, but LEEP campaign does not endorse products. So in terms of a preferred manufacturer list, we don't have one, and in terms of many other sites, I'm not familiar with a preferred manufacturer site. I know there are qualified product lists that exist, but those are stating that they've met minimum efficiency performance requirements. But I think it's really up to each site specific to come up with a preferred manufacturer list. Whether it be the location you're in, for instance, as I mentioned, the salt water air environment, that might be a much bigger issue for one site, or it might be a cost or a sourcing issue. I know some organizations really want to have a single source manufacturer, or they want to have a certain type of replacements. So in terms of a preferred LED manufacturer list, I don't have access to one, and I would say it really depends on where you're located and what your needs are. Those are the two things. And then, so that's where I'm going to stop with a preferred list. And then someone else says, what do you need to provide to be eligible for an award? 1, install your site. 2, we provide an Excel form on the LEEP website. There's a link, or there's a web page called Awards. We probably are going to revise it again to change it slightly, but it's still the awards page, and you'll see it. There's an Excel page that's there. You download it. You pretty much provide us, again, your location, your number of fixtures, your types of fixtures, operating hours for both the new and the old installations, and then you submit it back to us. And we ask questions if we need additional information. We received, we had parking from LEEP Award 1, we had over 600 different parking lots and structures provided to us, and we reviewed them and asked questions as pertinent. So please join the LEEP Awards, and if you have any questions, go to leapcampaign.org, and we can and you can contact us through there, and we'll try to respond. At this point, it's 3 o'clock. I thank you for attending, and I respect your time, so I'm going to terminate the webinar. Thank you very much.